Hey everyone, welcome to GTM Secrets, everything go to market, sales, marketing, RevOps, you name it. We have people from all different walks of life, data scientists, we had a CIA operative on here. We've had all types. Today, though, we have an expert marketer, Michael Freeman. He's joining us. Michael is the head of marketing at Airbase. Michael, do you mind giving a little bit of context on yourself, man?
Yeah, I have a pretty eclectic career. I started in supply chain as an industry and have a heavy operations background early on. But my passion was always marketing. And so after only a couple of years, I pivoted over towards marketing, did my MBA, and it's been all things marketing related ever since. I've been fortunate enough to work in a variety of industries, variety of company sizes, variety of ownership models. And then also I spent a number of years working abroad in Barcelona, Spain. So I have a pretty broad and deep experience across a number of different areas. I'm currently the VP of marketing at Airbase, which is now a part of Paylocity. So the deal just closed last week. And we are a procure-to-pay platform purposely built for the mid-market. So our real goal is to help all employees, but especially finance organizations, build the right type of culture around spending and give them the tools and capabilities so that they can spend with confidence, spend with efficiency and controls and policies, and do it in a way that gives everyone the visibility to make the right decisions.
You do have an interesting career. You have telecom at ShoreTel. You have my background originally was HR consulting. I'm very familiar with Workday. You do have an eclectic background, as you put it. First of all, how did you end up transitioning into SaaS?
I knew it was the future, so I was moving back from Spain, and this was 2012. And the world economy was coming out of the Great Recession. We were a few years out of that, and SaaS was really starting to have its moment. And so I wanted to be part of a growth industry. And I also wanted to be part of the eclectic nature is because I love learning. And so every new role gives me an opportunity to understand the dynamics of that market, that industry, that company, its stage of growth, right? All of those things can have a material impact on kind of what's important for success. And so that's what that ability to learn new things has always kind of drawn me in for these different types of opportunities, as opposed to just pigeonholing myself as saying, oh, I only do fintech or I only do this. And then, I saw the rise of the cloud, right? It made so much more sense for companies to buy on a subscription basis. And we're only as good as the value we're delivering right now. And I like that challenge. And that was something I wanted to be a part of. Specifically in the case of ShoreTel, I happened to have a childhood friend who was I was moving back from Spain, and he was looking for someone to focus on demand gen, especially digital marketing. And he didn't know I was moving back yet. And he said, hey, in your network, do you know anyone good? They can work remotely. They just need to know digital marketing really well. I said, wait, if you can wait a little bit, hire me. I'm moving back to the States, and I'd love to do it. And in their case, this is at a time before RingCentral or 8x8 or anyone else had taken off. And the phone industry was in a transition from kind of in your closet PBX to an on-prem model to a cloud-based, what they call UCaaS, Unified Communications as a Service, but a cloud-based model where you could just have back then people had desk phones. It wasn't just bring your own device. And so people had desk phones, but you would just plug it into the network and it just worked wherever you were located. And it was tied into everything else, calling trees, auto pop-ups with Salesforce when you have inbound calls, you name it. And it was very exciting.
Very interesting. So I have a lot of questions for you, but the first one, actually, how big is Airbase today in terms of headcount?
About 300 employees worldwide. We were always a remote first company, so we have employees all over the globe.
And how big was it when you joined?
I don't remember the exact headcount, but I joined at the end of February last year. So I want to say we were about 220 or so, something on that order. So we've grown significantly during my time. And, the revenue's grown, pipeline's grown, headcount's grown, and we've continued to accelerate in all of our R&D as well.
Love it. So as what I'll call a mid-market company, what are some of your favorite go-to-market channels these days for B2B SaaS companies like Airbase?
Well, so we market to the office of the CFO, right?
Yep.
And so I think with any of these types of questions, your mileage will always vary, and you really need to understand the particulars of your market. So, for example, if I sell to sales and marketing, my number one channel probably would be LinkedIn because
it's ours.
Because marketing and sales professionals are spending way too much time of their workday scrolling through LinkedIn when they should be getting their work done. But that's just the reality. That's the watering hole today for sales and marketing professionals. And so that's the channel you need to go focus on. And there's a lot of interesting work happening about building founder brands and other kind of creator things that were part of really a B2C set of strategies a couple of years ago are transitioning into the B2B space, principally through LinkedIn. In our case, with marketing to the office of the CFO, yes, finance is on LinkedIn, but not to the same degree and frequency that sales and marketing. And if you were selling to engineers, it would be a totally different story. So for us, we want to be in all kind of available digital channels. So we do have a presence on LinkedIn. We are actively investing and have been investing in SEO. We do actively invest in paid search and other types of paid digital, paid directories, where people, where you don't pay for a slot in G2, but it's really important to have a strong profile in G2, because if people are doing any comparison shopping in finance, people love to do comparison shopping. Then they want to work with leaders, and they want to work with folks that aren't going to get them in trouble or make them regret their decision. But the other thing specifically for this audience that's very valuable for us are in-person events. And there's many different types of in-person events. But really getting out in the field to get that exposure and have conversation with those buyers is incredibly invaluable for us.
Got it. Hey, and by the way, yes, people should get off LinkedIn, but please don't. Our ads are performing very well. Identity matrix drives us a lot of traffic. So let's segue for a second. One of my favorite questions, everyone's in a noisy market. I don't care what you're selling these days. I only have three really good competitors that I go toe-to-toe against at Identity Matrix. You, on the other hand, have a crap ton. And we all have an industry giant we're going after. In your case, I assume it would be Bill.com. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, they're one of them. So Bill.com, they champion the small business. That is in all of their messaging. It's in their DNA. It's in their history. And so they really champion the very small business. And so what happens is that the reason why Airbase exists is that there's historically been this big hole or gap in the market when it comes to procure to pay. And there's a lot of different names for it. There's spend management. There's AP automation as a piece of it. There's travel and expense. There's procurement intake. The latest trend is talking about it as spend orchestration. But there's been this gap for giving companies in the mid-market a complete end-to-end set of tools that can let you go from the initial request all the way through to coming to terms with the vendor, issuing a PO, receiving an invoice, processing that, making the payment happen, and then reconciling that in your ERP at the end of your period. That's never really existed. So on the high end, you had Coupa, you had Ariba, you had your large ERP platforms as well.
SAP.
Those were super SAP, Oracle, you name it. And all of those are very expensive, very difficult to use. You need entire teams of people to implement it. Usually you have to bring in an SI to do it. And then you have entire teams internally to manage it. Your suppliers don't like using it. Your employees don't like using it. And it's way out of the reach for most mid-market companies and early enterprise companies. It just doesn't make sense. So the other option was these kind of small point solutions, often freemium, where they're making the money off of your spend through, skimming off the interchange. And they usually were good at one thing, but they didn't give you a complete end-to-end experience. And so you were trying, as a finance professional, you were stitching together these different tools. So maybe you had Bill.com for this, then you had Divvy, which they later acquired for many billions of dollars, but then you have a Divvy credit card, or maybe you have a Ramp card or a Brex card, but then I do AP through Bill, and then I'm going to do travel elsewhere. And then AP is done on it was done on Bill, but then I don't have complete visibility over my spend. I don't have a unified set of workflows and policies and hierarchies to handle all of those approvals. I can't connect to all of my stakeholders in IT, legal, FP&A, department heads to have one seamless workflow. So they're just stuck. And so Airbase is that platform built for that part of the market that can give you kind of that enterprise breadth and power, but that kind of smaller, faster, lighter touch, faster time to value experience. And so in the case of Bill.com, what normally happens are people start with a manual process, then they'll start using, or maybe they're using their native ERP capability. Then they want a purpose-built tool, so they'll bring on something like a Bill.com, and then they outgrow it, right? The same way that we were talking earlier about CRMs, and a lot of people might start with HubSpot, fantastic tool. I'm a HubSpot customer today for marketing, not for CRM, but a lot of companies these days are starting with free HubSpot CRM. Then they grow to paid HubSpot CRM. And eventually as they get to a certain scale, they will often go to Salesforce. Now that's the time when that happens is getting longer and longer and longer because HubSpot's doing a great job of building out that product. Same thing goes with ERPs. Maybe they start with QuickBooks, but then they're ready for that next stage and they go to an Intact or they go to a NetSuite.
Yep.
Right. So, or Microsoft Dynamics. So we're in that next level up. So when you've outgrown your small disconnected point solutions, you'll come to a platform like Airbase.
So, okay. And you actually beat me to the rest of it, which is how do you differentiate yourself amongst giants? Now, okay, so Bill.com, SMB, SAP is going to be enterprise, of course. Got it. How do you communicate that message in a short, concise manner, though, that actually grabs the attention of a CFO? Because obviously, you just gave me a detailed version, which I'm sure was paraphrased compared to what you could have done. But you have 5 seconds to grab someone's attention. How do you do that differently than a Bill, an SAP, etc.?
The simple short version is we're complete or modern procure to pay for the mid-market, right? That's the simple shorthand. Or are you ready to improve? Are you ready to start orchestrating your spend, right? Bill.com is not orchestrating spend. Ramp is not orchestrating spend. They're a card company that's built some software around it. And they're doing a great job, right, for that use case. But if you want a complete platform for how you manage spend, you're ready for Airbase.
Makes sense. Okay. I think one of the biggest things that people struggle with, and I'm dumbing this down a lot or oversimplifying, but you just gave me the concise version of how you're different than everybody else in literally a single sentence. Now, granted, you're the marketing genius over there, so I would hope that you could. For me, it's like de-anonymize 70% of your traffic. That sticks out from competitors. In my opinion, too many marketers can't, and also sales, can't say their value prop against their competitors in one sentence, maybe two max. I think that's where a lot of people fall in their go-to-market strategy.
Something I would just add there. So, if you go to our website, airbase.com, and you see in the hero section, we start with a very clear pain-oriented message. Stop uncontrolled.
Yeah.
Why? Because the number one buyer we have is the controller. What does the controller do? They control things. Yep. They control spending. They control accounting. But they're someone who sets up policies and procedures. And I have over the years that I've worked, generally speaking, I think that if you sit in a cost center, you tend to be a little bit more of a risk-averse buyer. You tend to think about pain aversion, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to benefit gain. And so like sales and marketing, they're incentivized to take risks. They want to go hit bonuses, beat quota, et cetera. So you're generally going to get more positive messaging that's going to attract the swashbuckling sales and marketing persona. But if you're sitting in a cost center, the last thing you want is get in trouble. The last thing you want to do is be the person responsible for a fraudulent payment. The last person, you don't want to be responsible for all this uncontrolled spend that's happening because people are buying duplicate software. They're letting contracts expire when they shouldn't, right? And so their main goal is like, how do I prevent pain or prevent problems from occurring? So we still try to make it aspirational and action oriented. So, hey, you're going to go stop this, but we're going to stop the bad things. So we're going to avoid pain. And that's what we're trying to do. So the simple value message is, you can say it in a number of different ways, but stop uncontrolled spend or get more spend under management, right? Put yourself back into control, create a culture of spend, right? Create the right culture of spend, all saying ultimately the same thing.
Now, here's another question. Now, you guys obviously have a good brand out there. I was familiar with Airbase well before I ever got connected with you. That being said, so I assume that lends to better and easier inbound marketing. Do you guys do any outbound over there?
We do. I mean, I always want to do more outbound. I think the debate about whether is outbound dead, is inbound dead, is search dead, is LinkedIn dead, or ads dead.
Everything's dead.
Everything's dead. So I think it's all. I think we paint with too broad of a brush way too often, and sometimes it's to get headlines or clicks or engagement and be a little bit, provocative, hot takes, etc. But the reality is that there is no one playbook. There is no one size fits all. And so you need to understand your market in your context with how you differentiate against each other, the set of not just who you normally think are the standard competitors, but what are all the real alternatives a buyer has, right? So I'll use like a B2C analogy. Xbox's competition is not Sony. Like they're one, but I would argue a bigger competitor to Xbox is TikTok. Why? Because everyone's competing for attention.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Any parent, go look at your kid's screen time hours and look how long they're using Instagram, and you'll quickly know, wow, everyone's competing with Instagram for a child's attention. And so I think, similarly in this case, you got to understand what are all the realistic set of alternatives in a buyer's mind, not in your mind, but in a buyer's mind.
Right.
And then figure out, okay, how are we going to stand out and be understood quickly, right? The faster you can get to an aha or understanding, then the more time you can talk about the actual value instead of just explaining and giving, background pros about yourself. And then from there, you got to figure out what will be the thing that gets them to lean in emotionally. Like we like to think it's a rational decision. It's not. It's justified with rationality after the fact, but deep down, there's an emotional connection, a visceral feeling that drives people to make most decisions and take action.
Makes sense. Now, here's one of my favorite questions that I often ask. What does your go-to-market tech stack look like? And I'll preface that by saying I was a RevOps guy, RevOps agency. Now I run a MarTech tool. Like I can nerd out on this all day long. You mentioned you use Salesforce as a CRM, HubSpot for marketing, very common. Do you use other tools out there, intent data, ABM tools? Give me an idea.
Yeah. So as a Series B, now we're part of a publicly traded company, but, up until last week, as a Series B, trying to be scrappy, move fast, very biased towards action organization, we've done a lot of things, like some things we've bought essentially off the shelf and other things we've built ourselves just because we could move even faster to get proof of concept. And hey, we find we're getting value. Then we have to ask our question, okay, how much incremental lift do we think we're going to get by moving off whatever we've built to the next kind of off the shelf solution? And what's the opportunity cost of stopping and implementing and deploying that versus what other cool thing we could go do? So at our core, we have Salesforce as our CRM. We have HubSpot for marketing. We used to be on Marketo. I switched us over to HubSpot. I switched us over to HubSpot. I've actually
Good.
done that many times in my career. I've switched off of Eloquent multiple times. I've switched off Marketo multiple times. And then and we also have qualified for our on-site kind of chat experience and also our meeting booking experience. And then on the other end, for the BDRs and AEs, we use Outreach. And then we also use that's for our Cadence platform and email. And then hooked into that, we use a tool called Nooks as our actual dialer. So they've really
sorry, real quick. Why not use the Outreach dialer?
Because it gives us additional dialing capability at a higher scale that we really like using. And then the other thing it does is it gives us it creates a virtual kind of pen environment where people are live on Nooks with their coworkers as if they were sitting in office. So they can chat and collaborate with each other in real time in between dials. And so, working in a remote first company where we do have people literally around the world, being able to build that sense of camaraderie and collaboration is super valuable.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right now. That's really cool. Plus Outreach, to my knowledge, last time I used it, doesn't have parallel dialing. The sales floor looks cool. I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, we can do, I think we can do 6 parallel dials at a time. And then on the data side, we use Apollo for enrichment, and then we use KeyPlay. So we've been really happy working with Adam at KeyPlay. They're a relatively new startup. And so they've been bringing some really interesting insights to the table. And then we also we get data feeds from all of those tools plus G2 and Trust Radius. Sure. So what we did, even though I run marketing, I also happen to run RevOps. I know that's not a common combination, but I'm very technical. So we have RevOps report into me, and Lee and Dalton. So Lee runs RevOps day to day, and so Lee and Dalton, who's also on the team, they've put together a pretty awesome kind of homegrown intent and fit set of scores. So we looked at historical data, understand what's likely to turn into good, likely to turn into pipeline, and also likely to turn into close one business. And then we've also stitched together all these different intent sources into 2 separate scores. And then we use that for account prioritization. And so far, it's been fantastic in terms of the lift that we've been getting.
Love it. Do you use?
Sorry, one last thing I forgot to mention that's important for us is that for marketing, our most successful offer on our website is our interactive tour. And we use Novatic to power our interactive tours, and that's been wonderful because you've seen all the stats and quotes about B2B buyers, what percentage of the buyer's journey they've gone through before they want to talk to a salesperson, et cetera. And this gives them the ability to get a really good taste and sense for what our software looks like and what it does in a clickable way that guides them through the process and understand. So once they see it and they say, oh, I totally get Airbase, I need that, then they turn around and request a demo from there.
Interactive tours are definitely becoming more and more common, and I see why in a few weeks we're actually rolling out one as well. That's a lot of tech and sounds very expensive.
It's not bad. We're really smart about planning and so take the example, you should go from Marketo to HubSpot, that's cost savings.
Yeah.
We went from Zoom Info to Apollo, that was cost savings.
Fraction of the price, yeah.
Right. So we try to be we didn't buy a separate ABM scoring tool. We built our own.
Okay.
Right. So we do get, we do pay G2, we do pay Trust Radius, but we already own Qualified because that's our chat tool. Well, they provide data signals. We already own Apollo for enrichment. Well, and sourcing of contacts. Well, they provide signals as well for intent. So we try to make the most of what we already own and have available to us. And then that helps us get more value for our dollar. which makes sense given the nature of our business, right? Like stop uncontrolled spend, be responsible with the company's money. We try to do the same thing.
I would hope that you would have that under wraps. Yes.
And another thing that people like is, and companies have built whole businesses around this, is we try to be really smart around user management and making sure we're not paying for inactive licenses. We're only buying the licenses we need. And we try to be thoughtful about what kind of growth trajectory do we have available to us in our contract. So as we do hire more field reps, they will all need licenses to, most of those tools.
Right.
Okay, have we been thoughtful in the way we negotiate the terms of the contract to allow us to grow in a predictable and fiscally responsible way?
So it's super helpful. And like I said, I like nerding out on the tech. I think a lot of people do. What did you learn from big companies like your time at Workday, which is just massive at this point? What did you learn from the enterprise experience you have that translates over to your mid-market? They obviously don't have the same budget. They obviously don't have all the same resources, but were there things that enterprise translated to mid-market?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know so, but I think just picking what are the highlights. Let me start before that though. So early in my career, my first company I ever worked for is one of the world's, top 3 supply chain and transportation companies based out of Denmark, AP Moller. I was in a division called Mercantile Logistics, and part of Maersk. So if you ever drive by a port and you see those big baby blue ships, that was the parent company, which is itself a child company of this huge holding group.
I just think Captain Phillips. I'm just going to throw that out there.
There you go. So I learned firsthand, my first job out of school, I learned, this is what global commerce, this is what a big company looks like. And then I went to a .com startup. And then when the bubble burst, then I sought refuge and safety in the Walt Disney Company. And I worked in corporate there for 4 years. And I worked in strategic sourcing. So it was this brand new department back then. So I learned procure to pay. Like I got a master's in procure to pay effectively at Disney. And so that taught me how to do enterprise selling. And because I was being sold to all the time by all these top tier enterprise reps. And I also understood about kind of stakeholder management across the organization, different business units, et cetera. And so that was kind of my indoctrination into enterprise, those 2 companies. Fast forward, I then go to Workday through the acquisition of Adaptive Insights, and I stuck around for a few years. And I think the key things to really get, well, there's many, but some of the key things that I really got from Workday that I very much appreciate, and I already knew, but it just further reinforced it, is the importance of using data really well in how you go to market, and really thinking about identifying what are the best fit accounts, and then focus all of your energy there. I think there's a tendency sometimes with, and this is going through overall market evolution anyway, because of some other changes that have been happening, but there's a tendency for a lot of smaller companies to just cast as wide of nets as possible and see whatever comes in, see whatever they haul in. And when you're doing enterprise selling and you're doing, in their case, very large deals, Adaptive's ACV wasn't nearly as high as a kind of traditional Workday sale. There's a very finite universe of who you can sell to. And so you need to be really thoughtful about where should we go invest our very expensive, because those sellers are not cheap either. Where should we go invest those expensive resources to get the best return on that investment? And so they had a very sophisticated and extensive data operation for thinking about how what they call striping or tiering kind of their accounts and building out territories, et cetera. That was one. The other piece was the importance of brand as a lubricant, if you will, for the entire go-to-market process. It just reduces friction. It just makes everything easier. So you got, instead of having I'm dealing with a driveway gate that has a completely rusted out chain right now. And That chain needs to get fixed. But what would have made that chain a lot better is had we been oiling it regularly, right?
Yeah.
Providing the lubricant to make sure that it doesn't get rusty and doesn't get frozen. Brand in many ways is that kind of, it reduces all the friction because it builds trust. It becomes shorthand for a number of promises. And you can start talking about value faster if someone already understands who you are and they have some level of trust about you. And so they do a really good job of focusing on the brand. Now, the interesting thing there was the brand at the time was very much focused on selling to HR. That's where the vast majority of their success historically has come from.
Yep.
They bought Adaptive Insights, which sold predominantly to finance, FP&A. And so that was part of this overall transition to become a broader platform to sell to the back office. And I was actively involved in a rebranding exercise for Adaptive Insights, which became Adaptive Planning, a Workday company. And the reason for that is we actually had more brand equity within the finance community than Workday itself. Not from a pure awareness perspective, but in terms of how do you value this brand? Do you trust this brand? And do you see them as knowledgeable in your area? And so being thoughtful about getting awareness out there, that's first level. But the next level is how do I make it relevant and trustworthy and credible for the audience I want to go after? And I was part of that process to figure out how do we adapt over to be just as compelling to the finance community as we are to the HR community. And that's a multi-year journey. So that we're still mid-process of that journey after 2 years post-acquisition. But if you listen to, for example, their NPR ads they do right now, every day, they talk about being an HR and finance platform. For a while, they said HR, finance, and planning, but then they realized, you know what, planning really just belongs to these two. There is no planning persona. There's planning that happens in HR, there's planning that happens in finance. So really, we're an HR and finance cloud platform.
Got it.
And that was a really important takeaway.
Makes sense. Now, I asked about enterprise to mid-market, which is where I would call, where Airbase is today.
100%.
What about when you were at SkillJar? Your profile, and I would recommend anyone go checks out Michael Freeman, but your profile specifically states that you shredded the SkillJar marketing team and built it up from scratch.
I didn't shred the team. I inherited a team that was no longer there, basically.
Fair enough.
So,
you built it from scratch is where I was getting.
Yeah. I built it from scratch. I didn't tear down anything. It was there was basically no team effectively when I joined. So it was a complete rebuild at that point. So look, I was trying to make sure I had all my bases covered as we had to figure out a number of key things about what we wanted to do with our positioning, what we wanted to do with how are we going to go ahead and build pipe? How are we going to create scalable processes? Because I joined before the zero interest rate environment went away. So everything at that time was grow as fast as possible. I was there when interest rates started to change and the market started to change. But for me, it was cover all my bases. Do I have a product marketer? Do I have an ops person? Do I have content? And in my case, specifically there, I hired someone named Jen, and she's now a VP of marketing at a I think a seed or Series A startup. And I had her focus on customer marketing. And you might say, wait, why have that be one of your key hires early on? A couple of reasons. One is we sold customer education software, and with that, some personas are very extroverted and some are very introverted and some want to share and some don't want to share. And yep. In that market, they're educators. They love talking. They love sharing. They're very enthusiastic. They're great on camera. And we were fortunate enough to have some amazing people at amazing brands who loved our software. And so my bet there was, and we didn't have a deep budget. So my bet there was, let's leverage our great customers to help build our brand. And so instead of hiring a brand marketer, traditional corporate marketer, PR marketer, I hired someone whose real emphasis was on customer marketing because we were going to let our customers help build our. build a
Sure.
sense of community. In fact, I still have right here our some of the pillows that we had at our user conference in San Diego, and like she ran these amazing events where our customers would do video testimonials for us, but just build this love for SkillJar, and that was highly effective for us because it didn't cost a lot of money, but it
Sure.
helped amplify our message across the community that we really wanted to reach. The first hire I actually made, part of it was just coincidental, but the first hire I made was marketing ops. So Scott, who joined our team, he actually literally joined the team before I joined. I had already accepted the offer, but he joined just before I did. And he was fantastic because we had to get our house in order. We had to make sure, are we capturing leads the right way? Are we routing them the right way? Can we measure what we're actually doing to know if anything's working or not? Because you gotta take what you have and make it like plug the holes in the funnel wherever you can, because otherwise you're just wasting money and wasting time.
No, makes perfect sense. I think, especially in my space, I can tell you my biggest competitor is very, very good at getting customers to rant and rave about them. And that's something that we're working on right now. I can attest to the power of that because I'm behind the ball in comparison to others when it comes to customer marketing, UGC content, etc. So I can certainly appreciate the heck out of that. This is, I think, one of the more interesting conversations that I've had. We've had on some bigwig execs. We've had on some very interesting people, startups, enterprise, you name it. But we kind of cover the entire gamut in this, 37-minute conversation. So, Michael, I really appreciate it. What is the best way that people can connect with you?
On LinkedIn. I'm not on X. I'm not on Instagram, but I am on LinkedIn. So Zach does me on LinkedIn.
You're one of the marketers toying around on LinkedIn too much, right?
Definitely not. But I'd be professionally irresponsible if I wasn't on LinkedIn. But I try to keep it to a reasonable dosage.
Very, very fair. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining. Go check out Michael Freeman on LinkedIn. Well, Michael, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.